Hey, welcome to the show, everybody. My name is Mike, and this is the Leadership Toolkit, as you know, the definitive leadership podcast to help leaders grow and impact people in their world and in their businesses, themselves, and everybody that's around them. Today, I'm very excited. As you know, we interview people from all different verticals of business so that we can get their take, we can learn from them, we can take actionable items in what has helped them grow in their successes and what has helped them grow past their failures or those stumbling blocks. So today I'm excited to bring onto the show. I've got an author, a keynote speaker. He's an expert in entrepreneurial business ownership, and he's got a new book out called Grit It Done. And I am going to bring on the show right now, Mr. Reid Tileston. Reid, welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you so much, Mike. Happy Wednesday. Super happy to be here.
Absolutely. I'm excited to have you on board here, man, and have this conversation with you. So if you would do me a favor, if you don't mind sharing a little bit about your background. I know you've bought and sold businesses. We were talking about you have, in fact, a mountain, if you will, sort of a mountain in the family here that you said is a couple hours south, I think you said of me. Mm-hmm. So if you would just share a little bit about who you are, your leadership background, your entrepreneurial background, and then certainly share a bit about the book with us.
Yeah, absolutely. So a couple interesting facts about me. One, I'm from Northern California originally, and my parents actually met at the starting line of a running race. My dad, who's 6'2", and his cousin, who's 6'5". It was a hot day, so they were worried about chafing, so they were lubing up with Vaseline in her armpits, nipples, and her thighs. And out of nowhere, my future mother walked up. She was like, "Hey, guys, can I borrow some of your Vaseline?" And one thing led to another. So I'm the child of, endurance athletics from Northern California at my core. When I was 23 years old, I was working in finance in San Francisco. And I went to UC Berkeley undergrad, so I didn't leave with any debt. I managed to save up $100,000, okay? And I was 23 years old. And I was out at San Francisco's second oldest pub, a place called the Old Ship Saloon. It's pretty cool, actually. It has a mast of a ship that sunk in 1851 during the gold rush. And I was talking to two individuals that worked in private equity who were deal sourcing franchisors. And they're looking at a concept called Anytime Fitness. You've probably seen or heard of them. And in doing that diligence way back in 2007 on the franchisor, they were like, man, these like franchise locations, there's a couple hundred back then, only a few in California, can do really well. Now at this point, I was a spreadsheet jockey with about $100,000 in the bank. And I was looking to level up my life. I didn't think I was going to be the next, founder of Google, but I didn't want to sit behind a spreadsheet anymore. And that's where this idea of entrepreneurship through acquisition and, being a low risk entrepreneur and an entrepreneurial business owner kind of came to me. Was through these two private equity pros that introduced me to the idea of franchising. So long story short, three of us pool our money together. I quit my job, go to Sacramento in December 2007, right when the Great Recession began, opened a fitness club. Now, that wasn't the problem, though. The main problem is that we just ignored the franchisor who said, go to a small town with no competition. We went to Sacramento, and it was too competitive. But you couple that with the recession did not help. I didn't know how to run a business, so I had to learn by doing. Anyways, dressed up as a purple superhero, pounded the pavement, got that club to, make a couple $1,000 a month. Not a great return on the investment. But with that said, made some mistakes. Then I was able to go out through some fortuitous lending instruments in 2009 and open up a very successful club. And that just laid the groundwork for becoming a multi-unit owner and all the other stuff that I've done as an entrepreneurial business owner over the last 16 years now. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
All right. Give me one sec. Sorry, I was taking notes as you're talking. So that's a really, when you're talking about, here's one of the things that I pick up on. Like you're saying, hey, I started this right at the beginning of the Great Recession, like at 2007. Can you recall like that was when you first were getting started out in this new adventure, new piece of business? What were some of the key things, and what would you recommend for other entrepreneurs if they're starting off right now in 2024? It brings its own challenges. Thinking back at the things that you did besides just pounding the pavement, I heard you say that, but what else would you recommend for people to do to start off and say, okay, well, here's what I'd recommend. These 3 or 4 things to start right now if you're starting a business in 2024.
I think the critical first step of it, 2024, 2007, 2037, whenever it is the first step is assessment. I go through this in the book I wrote, Grit It Done. You can get it, grititdone.com, 99 cents through the end of May. The first
Nice.
step in the process is assessment. Is understand which of the 4 personas that you actually are. And the first persona is, are you an employee? Employees are the backbone of the American and the world economy. Okay. The good ones
Sure.
get promoted. The bad ones, find the door. It's a great life. Second one is, are you an equity employee? And that's an employee that has the ability to work on their business, not in their business. And it's like a CEO role, but they're not they don't control the business, right? They might be at the peril of a board, or they might be at the peril of investors. Okay. Then the third persona is a business owner. I've been a business owner for a long time. Business owners, oftentimes, you get the autonomy, you get the freedom, you own the upside. Oftentimes, though, business owners work for the business doesn't really work for them. Then there's, of course, what I'll call an entrepreneurial business owner. And that's where you have the autonomy, you own the upside, but ultimately you work on the business, not in the business, and you can craft the right kind of lifestyle. So the critical part is, before going down the path of whichever of those you want to go down, just understand which intrinsically aligns to you. Some people are not meant to be business owners, and some people are just better designed to be equity employees. Not me, right? I had that identity when I was out in the purple superhero suit pounding the pavement. That's when I said, you know what? If I'm going to be the individual in the 95-degree heat, trying to sell fitness memberships to high school kids to break even, while my 2 partners, and bless their souls, is not a bad thing about them, are, in a high rise in San Francisco building financial models. And I want to own all that upside, right? I had that identity. And I think it's just critical for people to understand that part as early in the process as possible.
Sure. Well, and I think so. If the first one is assessment, you got to decide where you are, or I guess that's one that comes with self-awareness. Wouldn't you agree? Because that's, it's not just who you want to be, because there are certain things that you could look at, and from the outside, being an entrepreneur looks sexy to some people, right? You go, oh man, that's going to do the thing, and I can own all this, and like you said, you can have all of that autonomy and so forth. But the reality is, being an entrepreneur is hard work. You go from being an employee and working on somebody else's business to constantly working on the business. And I think you said it excellently when you said, you're have the opportunity to work on the business rather than just in it. When I think when most entrepreneurs start out, they're working in the business and on the business, and you have this illusion or this vision that you want to always be working on it, but you have to put in some blood, sweat, and tears first, don't you?
I tend to think so. And again, it goes back to what lifestyle you want. I also think that's personally for me, the fun part of the business. And sometimes working in the business is the same thing as working on the business. So for example, I outline this in the book. I bought an industrial services business, fantastic business, doing a little bit less than $1 million in EBITDA when I bought it. But this is very dirty work, Mike. This is a great kind of work that keeps America running: grease trap pumping, kitchen exhaust cleaning, factory maintenance, like that kind of work. And I realized pretty quickly that, this is a very technician centric business. And in order for me to be the kind of leader that I want to, because you talk about the importance, which I think is critical, of leading by example, the importance of knowing your people and the importance of being decisive. And I think that the ability to be decisive, by the way, comes a lot from leading by example and ultimately knowing your people. That's how you have that relationship credibility to be decisive and have your team members back you up. But in a business like this, that actually came to, in my judgment, from being in the field for a good amount of time. And it actually led me to get my commercial driver's license too, which, if you knew me before I bought this business, I didn't even know what the word mechanically inclined meant, quite frankly. But that was what I determined was the way to work on the business, was to work in the business. And I think that certainly a lot of people aspire to have absentee ownership or to have a holdco or things like that. I tend to believe that in order to get there, you're very well served to spend a fair amount of time working in the business, learning how it goes. It just makes one a more effective leader. And also for me personally, over the years, it's also where the real fun comes in.
Sure. And I would absolutely agree with you. I think there's something to be said. I've shared this on past shows. I've shared it on other podcasts when I'm having conversations with folks. It's one thing, like I think there are certain personality types that are wired that it's like, well, I've got to have this thing just perfect at 100%. But the reality is, if you know how to do something at least at like a C or a C plus level, right? Like a 75% level. And like you're saying, hey, I got in the business, I got the commercial driver's license, or you're working on to be more mechanically inclined. There's something to be said about at least having that understanding so that you know what you're looking for from the people that are real experts in that field. So you can surround yourself with people that'll help lift the business up, that you say, hey, I don't always have to be doing that one individual thing and so forth. Sorry, go ahead.
And I was going to say another critical part, which I go through in the book as well,
Mm-hmm.
is that it's a power of peer groups. I think a misconception that people have is that you join a peer group of other business owners or CEOs once you're successful. The truth of the matter is you join a peer group to become successful. Whether you want to believe it or not, the people that you this is common knowledge, but the people that you surround yourself with, you're going to become like them. It's like not a voluntary thing. So be
Sure.
very thoughtful about how to do that. When I was looking at selling a business, I had a key team member that I'd invested a lot in over the years. Because for me, by the way, I think that the main utility I get out of business ownership is the ability to really push people to level up their lives, invest in my team members. And the best relationships are with the couple of entrepreneurial employees that I've been blessed with over the years that have stayed close to me, both when I owned the business and the years afterwards, and are still very involved in my life. But the critical thing is that I had a team member that I had invested a lot in, Mike.
Mm-hmm.
My heart was involved in it, right? My emotions were involved in it. And he decided that he was going to leave the company when there was at a point where a sale was imminent. And I was completely ready to take what would have been which turned out to be a life-generating wealth event for me, a great outcome for all the team members with the retention bonuses, and a great fit for the acquirer. I was willing to throw a lot of that away because I was so hurt by what happened. Yet I was a member of not one, but two business owner CEO groups that through that process, gave me good coaching and that deep, hurtful, vulnerable kind of coaching that effectively saved me from myself. And I've seen that through my own experience. And I've seen that with so many other business owners and operators as well. So I always encourage people, don't wait until late in the game to join a peer group. Join as quickly as you can. And don't just join one, join two. And for people that are thinking about, becoming a business owner, or I'm an adjunct professor, I teach this stuff. One thing I always coach people on is, get a peer group while you're looking to buy a business. And as part of your diligence, right, find peer groups that you're going to join once you own the business or once you're operating the business, because the rewards of it can just be life-changing and astounding. So key takeaway, be thoughtful and diligent about who you surround yourself with. And there's no right, there's no wrong answer. Check out a lot of the groups, find the one that just feels right on that gut level, and the rewards can be transformational.
No, I think that's really good advice. Being thoughtful, being diligent, being deliberate, in what you're looking for. Where could somebody start when you're talking about, an entrepreneur, somebody that's starting off their business, when you're talking about somebody, maybe they're just now getting into a leadership role in an existing business, or if they've been in a leadership role for a little bit, where would you recommend, like, where do you look, Reid, when you say, hey, okay, I need a peer group to be able to comment on this? Where can somebody start when we're talking about being thoughtful and being deliberate in those pieces? What should somebody look for in that group, or where do they start looking for a group like that?
Yeah, so great question. First and foremost, and I'll answer both of them. One is I have my groups, right? So I'm like happy and content, but I always have my ear to the ground for more opportunities to find them. And where I personally do it is I just get out there. I've always lived by the saying, if I live by the door, I'm going to die by the door. So I get out, I go to events, I just have a network. So I hear things, right? I go on these really cool podcasts with people like you, and I hear about things, and that inspires me to take action, right? So that's what I personally do from the position that I'm in. Second thing, though, for what your listeners can potentially do is that, if you're thinking about going down the route of becoming an entrepreneurial business owner, like what in my opinion is the most time efficient, the most cost effective first step is spend the 99 cents through the end of May and the 3 hours it takes to read the book that I wrote, because I go into all of these 9 steps. And, I've been doing this for 16 years, and I wrote a book that was like, hey, what do I wish I'd known 16 years ago? But the real critical part is take that first step. think through the assessment, decide if it's a route that you want to go, and then determine what the right next step is for you, which could take a lot of forms. And goes to answer your question. It could be that you decide you want to spend money and go get an MBA, right? I have an MBA. MBAs are great. You could decide that doesn't make sense, and you just want to go to like a weekend workshop about, how to buy a business or how to level up your business, whatever that might look like. And at that workshop, then you could meet people and you could say, hey, let's form like a 5-person mastermind. You could go join Entrepreneur's organization, which I'm currently a member of, or Vistage, right? But the real critical part is, I think that before you take those steps, right, pick up a copy of the book, read it, and decide. It'll just give you some interesting ways to think about how to go through that path. Because, Mike, life's most important commodity is time. I see a lot of people that don't do the assessment and just, spend money, and they waste their time going down a certain path that I think if they really gave thought to it before, they might determine is not the right path for them. Now, it's a dialectic, right? It requires balance. I think ultimately that there's one great quote that I use. It's a little bit religious, so forgive me, but revelation comes to the children of God when they are on the move, not when they're sitting back in their habitation, waiting for God to tell them the first step to take. So I think you have to balance the assessment with taking action. And that's where the nuanced, effective path comes from. But it doesn't come without doing assessment, and it doesn't come without taking action. So, 99 cents, 3 hours, great first step in the process to becoming an entrepreneurial business owner.
Absolutely. And I think that you're spot on with talking about, and for anybody that is listening to this, and I think I put it up here on the screen in case you're listening to the podcast later. Let me pull this up. You can get Reid's book at grititdone.com. That's grititdone.com. And so I would definitely encourage you, because and several things I picked up on that you said there, Reid, is like, first off, you're saying, hey, take the assessment, take action. Every single thing in life stems from taking some sort of action. I've heard the saying that we're the sum of the decisions that we've made, right? And so at some point, if you are listening to this podcast, if you're watching the show, whether it's now or later on, make the move. And then here's one of the other keys, because I interview so many awesome entrepreneurs and business owners and leaders and managers, just like you, Reid, that you talk about it, and people will often watch where you're at and they hear all of these awesome things that you've done. Well, all of that's literally started with the first step, right? You're saying, hey, I started this, and somebody could be watching this right now and thinking, well, it seems so easy for you. And you're like, yeah, but I've been doing this for 16 plus years. So I've amassed this. And I've heard Tony Robbins is one that I love to quote, because he says, success leaves clues, right? So take the things that Reid's done, take the things that other people have done on the show, and you emulate that, you mirror that, and you take the actions to move forward.
Yeah, and then you come back and you get on the show and you have your own unique story, and then people mimic that, and it goes from there, which goes back to that point about leadership by example being so critical.
So let me ask you, what are of the people that you follow, because you have other peers and other people that have mentored you and been very impactful in your life. What are a few key leadership traits? Because you brought up leading by example. So you see somebody do something and you say, okay, I'm going to do that. I want to follow on down that path. What are some other key traits that are really important to you, Reid, that you would recommend for, top leaders, people getting into leadership, that, hey, if you're going to follow somebody, if you're going to ask somebody to mentor you, if you're going to be in that peer group, what are those things that those people that should possess?
Most critical part of it is being thoughtful or about the individuals that you surround yourself with, and just find those people that come in every way, shape, and form that allow you to align to your ideal self. So 2 concrete examples. One, when I was opening a fitness center in California, I was sitting there typing on my computer, because I like to be high touch human diligence, right? I like to hang out in the coffee shops, talk to people, just be present before I make the choice. And out of nowhere, this lady grabs my bicep, and she was like, hey, are you the
Mm.
individual who's thinking about opening up the fitness center in town? And I was like, I am. As a matter of fact, we were still working to get town approval, so it wasn't fully official, though I did have my wrapped car there back in the day. Good
Sure.
memories. And it turned out, and so she said, well, just so you know, I want to be the very first member to sign up. Long story short, a couple months later, I hired her as a club manager, and she managed that club for me for the better part of 12 years, where, I had complete absentee ownership, was able to do a lot of other interesting things. And it all started at that coffee shop. So the critical part is that I find inspiration from the people that I surround myself with. And oftentimes that comes from people that are team members of mine, people that work for me.
Mhm.
So don't always think that you have to look up to, an individual like Tony Robbins. I love Tony Robbins, very impactful. Or David Goggins. I love David Goggins, very impactful.
Absolutely.
But look to your peers, right? Look to the people that work for you. I teach a lot right now. And you know what? I love the most engaged students, because the students, but they don't always realize that I actually learn more from them at times than they actually learn from me. So I encourage people, particularly if they're looking at buying a business, right? I think that people try to talk to people like me that have successfully done it. But oftentimes you're going to find that someone like me is like, I'm in demand because I've been successful with it. But really it's your peers, the ones that are equal to you, that are also looking for businesses to buy or in the trenches with you if you're operating, that can also be really helpful too. And last but not least, the team members that you have, they can be helpful to level it up. So be thoughtful about who you surround yourself with, and just know that inspiration and motivation can come from a variety of different avenues and different people that may not be readily apparent.
No, absolutely. I had somebody on the show a few weeks ago. I have two thoughts that I'd like to share, because it's interesting. I had someone on the show a few weeks ago, and they were talking about he'd been in the automotive industry for years, and he says a lot of times, he says, I would just listen to the, depending on where you're at, they either call him a lot porter or a lot man, a lot boy, right? Because those people, that person, the lot porter, is around in all the cars. They're around in all the departments. They're talking with everyone. And he says, if you stop and listen, just like you're saying, Reid, and just have a conversation and truly listen, a lot of times those people will tell you about the elephants in the room, the things that aren't going right in the business that you need to change. A lot of times they'll tell you the things that are going right in the business that you need to keep doing. And you may be thinking about, man, I should be stopping this. And they're saying, no, don't stop that. And so it's important. Another big fan of John Maxwell. He talks about 360-degree leadership, to listen to people that are on that peer level, to listen to people that do work for you on the ground level, and to listen to those executives, so that you can learn how to continue to grow and move up.
Yeah, absolutely. And then one key thing is that, again, going back to the industrial services business, it was like the
Mhm.
best thing ever, because going out in the trucks, right, with technicians, the things that I would learn, the good, the bad, the indifferent, just absolutely fantastic. These are things that would never get talked about if I saw them in the hall or in the shop, right? They'd never get talked about during a review or anything like that. And I'd never hear them from the layer of management either, between the technicians and myself. But going out in the field and getting that stuff, yeah, absolutely critical. And that's really how one can create a winning culture in a business. And to me, when things like that happen, I'll put my Chicago booth, MBA, University of Chicago Booth School of Business MBA, quant hat on for a second.
Sure.
That's where it flows through in, percentage points of additional EBITDA or profit margin, right? Doing things like that fundamentally, in my experience and what I see out there, impact the bottom line. And those relationships just make the enjoyment of business ownership so much better. Because, Mike, I think a lot of people, at least that I interact with, they get interested with the idea of being an entrepreneurial business owner, right, by the autonomy and the freedom. And that's awesome. That's a really critical part of it. I don't think that people realize, though, that it's actually the relationships that really drive so much of that fulfillment. And last but not least, you get a vision of what good government looks like. Because when owning a business, as a lot of your listeners can relate to, the pile
Sure.
of paperwork is this high. And it's like, wow, we could be doing so much better as a country. So you get the autonomy, relationships, and a vision for good government. That is why I get fired up about presenting the path of low risk entrepreneurship, of either buying an existing business, which there's a lot of trends around with the silver tsunami right now, or buying into an existing concept like a franchise. There's just great ways to become an entrepreneurial business owner. And it's certainly not for everybody. And there's risk involved. And oftentimes the risk involves personal guarantees, which if you fail, it means you're going to end up in chapter 11, right? Bankruptcy. There's no chapter 11 in my book for that reason, but it's just a great option that everyone I think should at least analyze at some point in their life, because, to be a better American is to be an entrepreneurial business owner.
I love that line. To be a better American is to be an entrepreneurial business owner. I love that. So one question for you, and I don't know why I wrote this down, but I'm curious because you brought this memory. There was a twinkle in your eye. You said, "I remember sitting at this coffee shop and you had your wrapped car." What kind of car was it?
Yeah, Benjamin Franklin once said, "A penny saved is a penny earned." So it was just like a Jeep, a gray Jeep that was wrapped with Anytime Fitness back when I was a club owner. So it got the right balance between not being so nice that people knew how much money that I was making, right? But also not being so bad that it reflected badly upon the club. So it had that perfect balance.
I was just curious. I was curious what you were driving then. The other part that I wanted to share, my son and I have a 17-year-old son, and we were when you're talking about talking to people and building relationships, he got invited to a Broadcasters Association event, and it was the first sort of thing of that type that he had been to. So we all go as entrepreneurs, as business owners. There's seminars. You talked about peer groups. We talked about stuff like that, and he was invited to this Broadcasters Association event, and it was crazy because he's very young, and so you had people coming up like, "Hey, what are you doing here?" And a couple of things. One, I was surprised. Really, I was actually really proud of how conversational he was with people. But two, I don't think he realized after the first couple of people we talked to, I said, "Hey, make sure that you are getting business cards, make sure and nurture a relationship now." And it's not always just about like what's in it for us, but you've brought up several times, like, "Hey, that peer group and the people that we established the relationship was," and he goes, it was like this light bulb went on for him. He goes, "Oh man," he goes, "I didn't even think about it." He goes, "All these people," because that's what he wants to do, is go into broadcasting and do that sort of deal. He says, "All of these people, like you said earlier, are in the doorway, like they're that doorway there, and they have an opportunity." And so we do need to look through that lens, I think, as leaders, as business owners, as entrepreneurs, that every single person we're coming in contact with, and you brought that up, if we slow down and listen really well, then there's so much that we can learn, just beyond the start of a relationship, right? So a couple other questions for you, Reid, if you would. When it comes to leadership specifically, if you're talking about, because you're talking about going into business, you're talking about this an entrepreneurial business ownership. When you're going in and, like you said, you're acquiring a business, or if you're building your own, what are some key things that you can do? And then I want to come back to you on it for yourself as well. But what are some things you feel you can do to help motivate your teammates and the people that you're bringing on board to help move that business forward with you?
I think it's critical when you're looking at a business to buy, and also when you're in the business. And I go through this in the book around how to cultivate what I'll call entrepreneurial employees, is that when there is the wrong team member in the organization, it is critical to do the hard thing and let that person go. And it's better off for them in the short term, the medium term, and the long term, because they'll land somewhere that will make them better off. And it's better for the business overall, because there's so many damaging things that the wrong person does in the business, not least of all the really good team members that you have, the ones that could transform the business, transform your life as an owner, the whole 9 yards. They are consistently judging you as the owner. They are consistently testing you as the owner, and they are consistently figuring out what you will tolerate as the owner, because culture at its core is what the business owner what the leader tolerates. If you tolerate mediocrity or you tolerate a bad fit, it can have the impact of pushing your good people away, or at the very least demotivating them, so eventually they'll get pushed away, and that could have terrible costs for the business. So it's critical that when there's the wrong person in the business or the wrong person in the wrong seats, that action is taken to to get them out and get them in the better life situation for them. And it goes back to the power of peer groups, because it's easier said than done. Yet, and I've been in a situation where I knew in my head it was the right thing to let someone go, but having the right people around me to help coach me and push me and nudge me in the direction to do what I didn't want to do has been tremendously valuable. So 2 key takeaways. 1, people that are not the right fit, let them go for their own good. Secondly, again, surround yourself with people that will empower you and enable you to make those hard decisions and go from there. And by the way, what Grit It Done, which is actually a story from a team member that I had that inspired this saying to come out of my mouth, and that's why I called the book this. The core principle of it is, do exactly as a leader what you don't want to do, precisely when you don't want to do it. If you follow that mentality, elation always awaits and good things will come your way.
I love that, man. And I think you're absolutely right that, and we've all heard it said, like, you got to do that mundane thing. You got to do the thing that you don't want to do, but you need to do, because just on the other side of that is where you see the most success. It really is. Once you've pushed through that and you've done that, the thing, and I think you said it very eloquently, when you're doing the thing that you don't want to do right when you don't want to do it. Like, it's one thing to have it in the way and say, man, I don't want to do that thing, but it's a whole nother thing to say, I don't want to do it. And I especially don't want to do it right now when it's being presented to me. Right.
Oh yeah. That's where you get the 10. I mean, the way that I judge my days, I actually rate myself on this every single night, is exactly that. Did I do exactly what I did not want to do at the exact time that I didn't want to do it? And I put this framework in the book in the last chapter, where I actually use it in the framework, in the example of when I was selling a business, of all the things that came up that were really annoying and how I applied that Grit It Done mentality to make it happen. One example is the buyer had attorneys that sent me this very long legal diligence list, like 43 pages, I believe it was. And I was like, great, this is going to take me probably 6 or 8 hours to do, or I could ask my attorney to do it. It's just going to ask me all these questions anyways about it. But if I don't do it, until I do it, it's going to delay the whole deal. So then I got the thing at I think 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And I just dedicated right then and there. I said, you know what? I am just going to stay up as late as I need to this evening. I had other stuff I had to do. I'm going to get that stuff done. Then I'm going to stay up as late as I have to this evening. And just take the pain, and I'm going to get it done. I really did not want to do it. And I really did not want to do it at that time as well. But it was the best possible situation. So I think that consistently doing that leads to great outcomes. Now, the pushback is like, well, you can't always do that. Yeah, fair enough. There's certain things that you can't do that with, right? There's certain things you can always do later, but do that assessment, decide, is this something that's so important I got to do it right now? And then just do what you don't want to do when you don't want to do it, and good things will come.
That's really good advice. Let me ask you, what does the structure of a normal day for you look like as an entrepreneurial business owner, as someone who's bought and sold businesses, as someone who's in a high level leadership role? I know one thing that I've found over time is it's easy when you're talking about, hey, I get this thing handed to me and gosh, I can't handle it right now. What does a normal day look like for you? What time do you start your day? Do you have a structure for every day? Do you let things come as they are during your day? What does that look like?
Yeah, so I could answer how my days are right now, if that's useful. I could also tell you how my days were when I was in a full, multi-business owner operating role and everything like that, which I go through in the book because I think it's useful for people to see what that structure is. But right now, I spend my time, I teach entrepreneurship through acquisition as an adjunct professor. So I teach people, both MBAs, people in executive programs, and I teach people outside of MBAs how to go down the route of being an entrepreneurial business owner. Secondly, is that I invest in individuals that want to become business owners. Typically, if they're going to go which I outline the steps to do this in the book and get an SBA 7A loan to buy a business. My recommendation is use your own money or use family and friends to fill that equity gap. But if you want to talk to someone to fill that, investment gap, I can certainly, I do it for people. I will consider it. So I invest in individuals as well. I also serve on boards for some of the companies that I invest in, which is very interesting because some of these boards, the board controls the company. So it's equity employees and not business owners. So it's so interesting to see that dynamic, but from the side of actual governance, if that makes sense.
Sure.
And then small business accounts for 43.5% of American GDP. Yet there is what I would consider to be a dearth of academic research on small business in the US. So I'm working towards a PhD where I do dissertation level doctoral research on small business mergers and acquisitions and small business leadership effectiveness. So I recently did a study of successful business owners that sold businesses. This is typically like the 1% people that, multimillionaires upon exit. And I determined factors that led to being satisfied or not satisfied with the sale. And then the current research that I'm doing, which I'm always looking for business owners to do a quantitative, study for, which is fully confidential, is around the role that relationships, how that drives both satisfaction and leadership effectiveness. So intrinsically right now, I'm just doing all that I can to give back to the small business community, which is, I've been lucky. I've lived my American dream. The American dream, by the way, despite what you hear, is not dead. It's alive and well. I believe that it's alive and well through the idea of entrepreneurial business ownership, buying existing business with the silver tsunami, buying to a franchise concept. It's alive and well. And I'm here to engage, with your audience and with my students about how they can do that, because I've just been lucky enough to do that as well. So what I do now is I just do all these projects that essentially give back to the space, which has been inherently successful for me. And it's why, by the way, I sell the book for 99 cents. And any of the money that I make from the teaching that I do, I invest it in people that want to go out and do this route anyway. So I've been lucky enough to have gotten there at this point.
That's really amazing. So it sounds like life is much more fluid now. When you were in the trenches, what would you say your regular day looked like? How did you, there's a debate because I've said, well, you can't manage time. We all have the same amount of time, right? But if you're putting in those hours into the business, when you were actively working in a business, what would you say that your day looked like? How would you break that out?
Yeah, not fundamentally different than right now, to be frank. I try to get up at 4:45 every single morning. And some fascinating facts about me: I have worked out for every day for at least 20 minutes for over 2,100 days now, so well over 5 years. Did an Ironman in 2018. Took a couple days off after that, and then I just kept the streak going. So I've done some races during that time as well. So it's not like I was just been doing these I've done like serious races, but I have a cool streak going. Professionals will tell you that may not be the best idea, but I'm a very big believer in habits. I love James Clear's book, The Power of Habit. It's just fantastic. I'm a big believer in habits. So what I do is I get up every single morning, and the first thing that I do is what is most important to me. That's how I judge the effectiveness of my day in the morning, is what's most important. Right now, what's most important to me, which we talked about a bit earlier in the show, is the interpersonal relationships and filling the family gap in my life, right? So first thing I do when I get up is I do some exercises around that. Then I do some exercises to engage the people that I am, involved with on a romantic relationship level in my life. Then after that, I go through the other things that are important. So I get up early and I do the things that matter to me most, that most align to my goals. Because if I'm not all in, I am in the way. If I am halfway in, I'm halfway out. So if you're going down the route of being an entrepreneurial business owner, it is critical that you are all in to the endeavor. Whatever form that takes, it is critical that you're all in. I believe the best way to de-risk buying a business or operating a business is to be all into it. If you're not all in, you're doing a disservice to the people around you. On the flip side, what I find is that when I'm all into something, I radiate this positive energy, this engaging attitude. And what that actually functions to do is that it functions to bring the right people into my orbit. So when I am out at that broadcasting conference, if I was all in, like your son is going to broadcasting, I'm going to be the happiest person there. I'm going to be smiling. I'm going to be happy-go-lucky. People are they're going to radiate towards me. I'm going to bring the right people into my orbit. And boy, that can just be contagious lightning in a bottle. Yet, if I'm hesitant about being there, if I'm hesitant about going down this route, if I'm thinking about 28 million other things, I mean, who's going to want to engage with me, right? So go all in. If you're not all in, you're in the way. Going all in starts with what I do first thing in the morning. And I judge my days by how effectively I did exactly what I didn't want to do, precisely when I didn't want to do it, that aligns to the all-in goal that I'm working towards.
Love that. How so we're kind of coming to the tail end here, if you don't mind, Reid. So a couple of things for everybody that's listening, that's tuned in. I know if you've gained some insight from this show, please do me a favor. Make sure you share it, throw some thumbs up on there. I've put up here on the screen a few times. I want to tell you again, you can connect with Reid Tileston on LinkedIn. It's ReidTileston. You can look him up on LinkedIn. You can certainly get his book, as he's mentioned several times, 99 cents. That is going to be like the best 99 cents that you've invested in yourself and in your growth. Check it out at grititdone.com. And then Reid, any final thoughts to take us out here today?
We've hit everything. And I appreciate you having me on. I think you have a great podcast, a great message, and yeah, I'm excited for your audience.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for spending your time with me today. If you would hang out for just a minute, and I'm going to go ahead and take us out. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's going to bring us to a close for another episode of the Leadership Toolkit. Thank you so much for taking the time to tune in and join us. As I mentioned several times, make sure and check out Reid's book, Reid Tileston. You can get it at Grit It Done. You can grit it at grititdone.com. So make sure that you go check that out. Do me a favor. Again, share this episode. If you have somebody that you know it would be impactful to, if they're looking to grow themselves, grow their business, get into entrepreneurship, there's great opportunities here. So make sure you share this, throw some thumbs up on it. I look forward to seeing you again next week at 12:05 Mountain Time. And until we speak next, stay great, everybody.